Pleasant today here in the rain. At least the sound is nice. So we're in Parshas Chayei Sara, which speaks about the first mission that someone was appointed to on behalf of another person, which was the marriage of the two greatest forces in the world, the parents of Yisrael, parents of the Jewish people, the Yitzchak and Rivka, Isaac and Rivka. And according to Kabbalah, that represented the unity of everything, the possibility for there to be holiness in the physical. Because Yitzchak, he had this very pure soul, the first baby to have a bris milah. Holy from birth. Forget about from birth. This is holy from birth. So Yitzchak was marrying Rivka, which represents the body. And you have this marriage, which represents the entire marriage of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our Maker, and whoever's hearing this right now. So the rebbe is speaking to the shluchim for the last time he addressed them as a group. And his message to them is very specific and directed towards a mission that is the most important mission of all time, which is to bring that unity, this marriage of heaven and earth, literally to happen in the world. And that's called moshiach. Today I want to read with you something called Seid Yisharim on this butzin that I've been teaching you about, these cucumbers that you could tell from their blossoming in their youth, that they had bina, that they were discerning, they had understanding. And it talks about that in terms of that being the nature of a person. But the nature of a person is subject to relative help from on high. If you're in the ultimate state of enlightenment, that is called a g-dly, a revelation of godliness. The Jewish people had that when they came out of Egypt, but then it was gone. They lost it. So why is there this rhythm in the world where you have it, you don't, you have it, you don't? We all came from the same place. We all have the same creator. He explains this beautifully, and that's where I want to get to. But before that, I want to introduce a very similar problem we say regarding Moses, Hu Gael Rishain, Hu Gael Achrain. Thank you and welcome. Moses is the first redeemer. He led us on the Exodus from Egypt, and he is the future redeemer to save all humanity forevermore, which is impossible to be because according to Torah law, it has to be someone from the tribe of Judah, and not Levi. Moshe was a Levite, right? He was probably a good musician too, if he was a Levi. And it says that he is the final redeemer when he can't be the final redeemer. So we have this another continuum. We had the Avraham Bilam, I hope you saw that one, continuum. Here we have the Moshe Mashiach continuum. And it starts as a force that starts with Shevet Levi, which is a teacher class. Yehuda was sent to make yeshiva. Levi was the one that was the Rosh Yeshiva. You have two forces. Mashiach is this organized leader, and Moshe was someone who was the mashpia, the wellspring of wisdom for all time. Even Mashiach, all his wisdom comes from Moshe, even though it says Mashiach will teach Moses himself in the future redemption, which is fascinating. But anyways, you have this connection that Moshe and Mashiach have one mission. One starts it by giving you wisdom. I've given you all the power in the world. It's all there. And one is once that's implemented finally and completely, then you conquer the lowest of all levels, the number 10, when you hit Malchus. Kingship, sovereignty, covers everything that's low about any spectrum of conversation. Malchus represents that, and then of course when you take it into when you communicate that, then it replicates itself and it becomes the top, the Keser Malchus. When the lowest receives, and all it is a recipient of something else, that ultimately is Nekeva to save of Gever. The feminine principle of receiving is intended to surround entirely and encompass and be the crown. Ashes Chayil, Teres Baila. She becomes the Makabel, becomes higher than the Mishpia. So Malchus, which is the lowest sphera, which it says it only has what you give it from above. Welcome, Tracy. Malchus only has what you give it. It's number 10. It represents the completion of everything, and therefore, when you take it to the next level, it becomes a Mashpia. So Malchus has this inherent contradiction because it becomes the precious, the yakar, which we're going to get to. So now we have another rhythm. We have the rhythm from Moshe to Mashiach. You have this relative morning. You have this relative implementation of this wisdom and ultimately set to conquer the world. So you have this rhythm of how successful you are doing that. We're going to have it on a personal level here and related to tefillah. In what I wanted to really delve into with you. And this is the main content of the shir is going to deal with this beautiful description of inspiration and tefillah, prayer. When are you inspired, and why do you have to start again? Why do you have to? Why wasn't it enough that Moshe redeemed the Jewish people? It wasn't enough that I davened one time that was inspired. Why did the Jewish people lose their inspiration when they were redeemed from Egypt? They had it and they lost it. So ultimately, to be given back on the splitting of the sea in a much deeper way. The point of having immediate inspiration, we'll learn, is to know what to strive for, work to attain it, and through your efforts, that itself becomes your empowerment. Okay, it's not very comfortable to do this because it's like on. It won't let me put it on the whole screen. They're not that sophisticated yet, but it's pretty cool. So it's Sayyid Sharim, Teirizal Nasa Lecha Im Nekudas Hakesa. It says, mountains of gold have been made for you with points of silver. It sounds like a beautiful piece of jewelry or a gem. Mavur Medrash, Bizas Mitzrayim, so we collected gems when we gutted Egypt, when we escaped their enslavement. We had all the gems and all their gold and their finest china, and probably their Tupperware, which is convenient if you're going into the desert, I suppose. You want to have the best. What did they put the matzahs in? Probably. So Mavur Medrash, Bizas Mitzrayim Nikra Nekudas Hakesef. That's the dots of silver. Is when they came out the first time, they had this silver. Why? Why is that compared to the gold? The Bizas Hayam, when they got all the chariots, gems that they were laden with, all this to show that their victory was in your face. So they decorated their chariots with gems. They got much more wealth through that. Analogous here to mountains of gold compared to dots of silver. Hainu ki ha'er haboher she'er Hashem yisbarach liYisrael b'leil rishon shel Pesach haya ne'elam mehem. Because after Pesach was over and the matzah was digested, they lost that. The four cups of wine, that was now it's just the hangover after that. Ki ha'er haboher she'er, the brilliant light that God illuminated for the Jewish people on the first night of Pesach was concealed. And then, this materialized, thank you, as a it amplified the crying out of the Jewish people in order for it to return. It even says in the verse that they cried out at the sea. And that's why on the seventh day of Pesach, when the sea splits, God says, "Here I am again," and He comes back. This is intended to be an embodiment or an historical experience of the ultimate gain from your efforts. Yagia kapam, but in a way that's permanent. So all your efforts are now eternally rewarded. So that is representing by the gems that we got on the splitting of the sea on the seventh day. So now we're getting back to the former discussion. And Malchus has nothing except what you give it. It's a vessel, a kli kibul. So you have the mountains. The points of silver are like a tiny goblet next to mountains of gold. So you have this comparison, but the dot becomes a vessel because it has to receive. The ikar kli lakabel hu hatshuka. The way to receive is to have desire. So the vessel represents desire. It needs to be filled. And the blessing corresponds to the festival of matzahs. On the first night of Pesach, God made it that their vessel, their ability to be conscious, was perfect. They were perfectly engaged, aware of everything. But afterwards, it appeared that they lost this interface. They lost this vessel. Because they lost their inspiration and their yearning. After Pesach, the mitzvah starts of counting the Eimer. We harvest the barley in the field for the first time of the year, and that's called the same gematria as Yakar, the precious. Where is the precious? We offer this sacrifice, the first of the barley, the animal fodder. The first time you offer your animal is because you're saying, why have I become an animal again when I want to be the Chayei HaKadosh and have all of my animal devoted towards godliness? That's called Shuka. That's called the precious, Yakar. The same gematria, it's 210. No, 200, 310. It's Shaya Elamis. There's a whole beautiful mimer about how Yakar equals Shai, the 310 world's promise for everyone that's worthy. V'hu ki balel rishen shel Pesach niftach l'Yisrael Yakar. So this precious light was revealed on the first night of Pesach. Yakar meire al gedel hatshuka. When we speak about the precious, that corresponds to the greatness of the desire, the tshuka. So silver represents this yearning. That's the precious. It is the only thing that you could do to have merit. To just receive is no merit to you. This is the opportunity to have merit, described as silver, dots of silver, or more particularly vessels, tiny compared to these mountains of gold, which we'll see represents permanence. That the tshuka is not just something that you're yearning for something and you have this the ups and downs, but something that's constant. That's the mountains of gold we'll see. But if you see ma yakar chastecha, how precious is your kindness. So the yakar, the 310. V'achakach ne'lam mehem zeh ha'er k'moshe bir b'zeh Avias Mur, his father. Matchilim v'leil sheni lispar sfiras ha'emer. The second night you start counting the Eimer from this barley harvest. Shetzayeki ma yakar chastecha, as a representation of this cry out for the precious. When you have this feeling of connectivity. Mevakshim sheyachzir lahem Hashem yisbarach ha'aras panav. And you beg that God will return that illumination, that's called his panav, his face, meaning you see eye to eye. You see reciprocity. Life has meaning, and it's avert and experienced. So why does God play this hide and seek? The entire reason why God created such a platform, whereby He says, "Here I am," then goes away, brings out the yearning, is in order for you to attain it in greater strength, because now you've earned it. In order that should be permanent, al yedei yagia kapam, as it will be permanently experienced because of your efforts, the efforts of your hands. Ke'inyan shehalya ba'almin, this charvu bekadmisa, as it was in the worlds which lay waste in the primordial times. God created worlds and destroyed them. I think that's referring to Ad Shamar Kadosh Baruch Hu Yastein Lehane Li Dein Hane Li Vilhaven Zeis. Give this that does not have benefit, and something that does have benefit. We'll see what that means in a minute. Vilhaven Zeis. In order to understand this, the key is Charetz chas v'shalom briyasan. Why did God show Himself and then regret that He's there? Why would He make this? Why would He set this in motion? Ela ha'inyan. So this is the explanation. Me'almin dis charvu haya mishum shechafetz hakadosh baruch hu lahetiv la'briya. God uses the destroyed world, the ruins of the previous world, in order to express this desire to do good for creation, to lahetiv lahabriya, to benefit what He created. Lahankil la kiyum havaya, in order to inherit or bequeath to it the fulfillment of creation al yedei taina chazaka, in order by producing a very strong argument for the case of merit in your effort. And this describes how creation could have this argument from merit, because they had some partnership and effort in this production of creation. That's why God started creation with a big bang, to make everything inspired and animated. And then He took away this light, and it lay waste. So creation was left in the turmoil of yearning for that former time. Take me back to the garden. Im taina chazaka, with a strong argument that's behind them. Kinasasani betashlicheni, expressing the verse that says, "You've lifted me up and you tossed me out the door." V'hainu madu nasata v'chazarta b'cho. Why did you give and take away? So from that yearning, God returns it. In an eternal experience, that should be the new way, with a strong acquisition al yedei taina, by having this argument, this rationale, that your yearning should be considered as your effort. It's not your effort that how many times you pull the lottery machine, and finally you hit a pot of gold or silver. But this yearning itself becomes your merit. And this is why Hashem says, this is what benefits me. This is what I respect. And that's the way God deals with every individual, every soul. Welcome. Good morning to you. Kediksi Ve'ir Para Adam, the city of the wild thing, the para Adam, the wild thing. Yulad was born, Hainu Shenelid Bechukas Shememis, because we see that the yearning itself went into foreign territory. It's trespassing on other ground. Here it's called Shemem. It's this panic. No, maybe the opposite. It's this emptiness. Shemem. Asher loy taivim hema, which are not they're not worthwhile. Thank you. And when a person grows in his days, he becomes elderly. He cries out, why did God make such a vessel? He gave me such a vessel, which reflects our mortality. And life is so transient and vulnerable. And from that vulnerability, so what happens in your old age? It increases your yearning. So your strength in a way increases because it focuses now more on what's happening to me. You know, it's this really crying out from this entropy, this recognition of just, we're only here for so long. So how are we supposed to have the fountain of youth? So that awareness, Hashem takes your efforts and your yearning, and He refines and cleanses it. So whatever intention you have is becomes refined and becomes divine. And it establishes for this person that he should shine because this is everything. That a person should attain this as he matures. He occurs to him that the very moment he was born, all of his merit was already attained. As it says in Gemara, Brachos, and it brings in the Gemara that I've been talking to you about, butzin, mekatfe yadia, or yadaya, it says here. Cucumbers, they're recognized by their blossom. From the moment they're born, they start to blossom. All their maturation is just the cognizance of how you're given everything from the start. You are created with a certain nature. Your merit is what you do with that nature. So what's the problem? He's created good. Because there's an aspect of the person that's this finite. He only could see things as great as he is at the time. Gam can be eliezer, so you're led to whatever inclinations you have. They become more prominent until you reach manhood. As it says, whoever's greater than his person, than the next guy, has a bigger inclination. He's just more passionate. It could be directed for good or bad. But in his youth, before he attained a settled mind, he's just figuring things out. This vessel lay waste and desolate. But through the yearning for maturation and for finding meaning, God cleanses this vessel that's this fine immortal interface with the world. Because he's drawn like a menahir. I don't know, does that mean like a river? Or does it mean a luminous? It works either way. Menahir la yishuv das. This maturation of consciousness, of awareness, causes him to flow into betchukase, in his yearning. It brings out whatever strengths he has, becomes focused. Vashem yisparach emer love dein hanele, and God says to him, this is good for me. This is what I like. Ki kfar hervayachai sahadam ayidea kapov machmasakose, because already this person has profited through his efforts because of his crying out. That is the currency of your relationship with God. That is his effort, his crying out for feeling that he's the one with his purpose, that he and his creator are like it was on the first day. Remember, Exodus from Egypt is the birth of a nation. That's when it happens. So the idea of the points of silver is when things just start, and then you end up this mountain, this corona of zahav, of gold. So this first inspiration, I guess that's the moment of birth, like we're saying. Which represents creation, where God just created the world to benefit it's his creation. Because he doesn't have it as something that's ingrained within him. And he could lose it in an instant if he doesn't constantly work on bringing this inspiration back to the fore. Every time anew, through prayer. And this is what I was getting to. The whole explanation before was an introduction for this, to put in this framework, this context. Because the fact that today he's not praying like the day he won the lottery, or the day that he really needed help, either way, he's inspired. The fact that he loses this inspiration, this chukka, this yearning, hukin and zriya. We're going to give two brilliant metaphors to contrast these two states. We said before the silver and gold. Now we're saying, where do we see the rhythm of silver and gold here? In the difference of produce like wheat that grows in a field, which you have to plant every year, compared to a tree. You plant it once and there's fruit forevermore. It's the permanence. So the apple orchard with the golden mountains behind it is the idea of permanence and constance. Like from one effort, forevermore, the benefit from it is realized. Who in Kinyan Azriya? So there's this planting Chayei Yatzako, which is the crying out, which is the seed Magarin Hanizra that is planted. Saimeach b'yeseh. It sprouts forth. So you have the blossoming of the cucumbers, the points of silver, the points where everything shoots out from, is a yearning that's like a seed. Hanizra tzamech b'yeseh, kachei de'etzaka. So too through crying out, Shala Adam kinasasani v'tashlicheni, because you lifted me up and then I was cast away. Madua heirli Hashem isbarach mekayim shuka. Why was I inspired? God caused me to be inspired. V'nesal l'machakach, and then I lost it. So God gives it to him again, and a second time. That's the seventh day of Pesach, the splitting of the sea. Zaysachuka, but here it's seen as a permanent type of inspiration. B'kfiyas gamor, in a completely permanent way. B'kinyan yiyah kapecho, acquired through your efforts. V'zaysakfiyas nikra turi zahav, and this effort, and this permanence is called the mountains of gold. Vatshuka harishena. So the first yearning, his first inspiration, shehu rak mechasta yisbarach, which was something that was imposed upon him, because God said, "I'm going to start you off with a little jolt, and then we're going to celebrate at the end." So that's called rak mechasta yisbarach nikra nekudas hakesef. That's the dots of silver, which remember we said they were vessels. V'yeshla dimyan bezeh ha'elam. And that has a analogy in life experience, if we ever remember what it was to have a field. Now we just have a supermarket, I guess. Dimyan bezeh ha'elam tvuas hasada, the produce of the field. Shetzrikim lezreya eisa b'chol shana mechadash. Every year you have to replant it. V'im lo yizareya lo yitzmach yatzmiach. And if you don't plant it, it's not going to blossom. It won't sprout forth. So you have to daven every single day anew, in order to arouse this. And with regard to the renewed inspiration, when God returns him to his former state, because of the virtue and his merit that he has in in setting himself this goal, Adam Gomer is going to be an internal inspiration. Yashdinyam Zeba Elam Paris Ha'ilan. And the idea is expressed in the fact that you can have a fruit tree, Shazarin Esailan Pamechad, which you planted this fruit tree once. Sara ba'atzmai. And every year you have it bud on its own. Matzmiach Paris, and it gives fruit. Kach Chayei Hashem Yisborach Zeisat Shuka Belev Ha'adam. So God implants this into the heart of every person, in the heart, Leval Yitztarachai L'Shum Tefillah, that he never more will need to pray. It won't be an effort, we'll see it means. But it's the idea of, you have a certain amount of time to establish your merit. God will find a positive thing in whatever you've done, but everything will make sense, and all your efforts will be rewarded in kind, and in a way that it becomes a thematic, and it becomes the range. Like, you had good days and bad days, so that becomes the range and of your future experience in a way that will justify all of your efforts. So that's the fruit tree, that now it's stopped the time of just having merit of planting every year and doing something. You just sit back now under the apple tree. Because that's where the legions in Egypt were spawned. It happens on its own. Matzmiach Paris, and it gives fruit. Kach Chayei Hashem Yisborach Zeisat Shuka Belev Ha'adam Leval Yitztarachai L'Shum Tefillah. So the person will no longer require to daven anymore. Because the yearning, that is his inspiration, is generated of its own desire. You don't have to seek inspiration. You will always be inspired. It prays for you, as it says in the verse, and he prayed for him constantly. As it says, and I am prayer. David Melech says, I am prayer. King David. And that's why we say, blessed is God who has not removed my prayer and his kindness from me. Meaning that the kindness in the person prays in it on its own, automatically. In other words, you just happen to be wired in a way that desires the things that are virtuous and good. The wanting to get there is already achieved. So that's why we compare the difference of the gutting of Egypt of its wealth, which is these dots of silver, and the mountains of gold, which represents permanence and constant inspiration. Have a great day and much success.